Yo, what's up, guys? Doing Mekkatorque now. This is the seventh boss in Battle of Dazar'alor. He is, the high tinker Mekkatorque. He's kind of like maybe he's democratically elected leader of the gnomes. One of the alliance leaders. I don't think he's a monarch. Maybe he is. I mean, it's more of like a scientist, I guess. But anyway, so first we're gonna start off with heroic here. The heroic positioning and stuff is a little different from mythic. I mean, the main mythic strat is just there's a lot more sort of positioning and stuff you really want to pay attention to. So the heroic, you're just going to kind of see what it sort of looks like. Mythic is a bit different from heroic. There is definitely some small changes to mechanics. You could say they're small, maybe they're big, that require you definitely to change your strat very much. You have to really focus on the bombs. So here you can see he one of the things he does is he fires out these gigavolt charges, and those are basically the bombs. That's what you'll hear. Get out with the bomb, like move out with the bomb. Basically, the bomb, when it blows up after a certain time, it puts a dot on everyone in the raid who is in line of sight of the person with the bomb. So basically, as the bomb is blowing up, you want to make sure you can't see anyone else in the raid. So the way you do that to avoid line of sight is you get behind. There's a few corners in the room here, and you'll see throughout the fight kind of where people are going. There's a few corners where you should move behind these kind of blocks of rocks and like ruins. That way you can line of sight the rest of the raid. He also does a big frontal. Definitely dodge that. It not only does it do lots of damage, it reduces your haste by 100% for like 12 seconds or something. So it's definitely not worth to just stand it and try to take it and just do damage, because you're going to be doing a lot less damage anyway. So definitely avoid the frontal always. The next big thing here, of course, is the bots and the shrink mechanic. So he casts World Enlarger, you can see here, and the moment he casts World Enlarger, he shrinks, I think it's 3 people on Mythic, and I guess it depends on your heroic size. But basically, those shrunk people you can see. So this guy, it's an important aspect of this fight is to have a weak aura or just some sort of add-on that is yelling your name or saying your name when you are shrunk, just so that people can see where you are. And then when you get into the bots, so basically when you get shrunk, you are able to get into the bots, and you definitely should. You should get into the bots and then have an add-on, a weak aura that is yelling your name when you're in the bot, so you can see who's in the bots. And in the mythic kill here in just a second, I will definitely go into how the bots work. But that's just kind of how, that's the basic part of it, is this: if you're shrunk, you're definitely going into a bot, because you do, I think, 99% less damage when you are shrunk. So there's no reason to not go into a bot. You're not going to do damage. You're wasting your time if you are not in a bot if you're shrunk. Um, and that is a very important mechanic, and you must be able to do that mechanic. And it does require voice communication. And again, I'll definitely get into that on Mythic. Just because in this heroic kill, I don't get into a bot, I don't get shrunk. So I can't really show exactly what's happening. Another thing he does, you can see there, is the wormhole generator. So these are all on timers too. All of these abilities are timed out consistently, so you can kind of work around like when stuff is going to happen. You can sort of get a feel for when your cooldowns are going to be used. When you're going to be maybe needing to heal a little bit more, when you need to dispel, things like that. Um, but you can see here he casts Wormhole Generator. Now how that works, he actually casts this spell on one of the raid members, and that person is sort of the target for the teleport. So the entire raid gets teleported to that person. So it's not on the boss, it's on a person. And then one of the timings there, as you can see, sometimes he will teleport us all, and then he will immediately jump, so you basically have to move out. And that's even more important on Mythic. But for marksmanship here specifically, you want to use True Shot right after he shrinks. Because if you are using your True Shot right when it comes up, basically here, so if I kind of cheated a little bit there on Heroic. I mean, Heroic is a little different with the timings, but on Mythic, you will see me very kind of religiously waiting to use my true shot, because your true shot will come up on cooldown before the shrink goes out, but it's usually right before he's about to shrink anyway. So the point is, you don't want to have true shot up while you're shrunk, because you can't do damage while you're shrunk. So you're wasting a true shot. So you want to wait until the shrunk comes out and then use your true shot. And of course that works for all other DPS classes. Basically, you don't want to use a cooldown right before the shrink goes out, because then you might get shrunk and it just wastes your cooldown. So you want to wait until after and then be like, okay, I did not get shrunk, so now I can use my my cooldown. And again, this is the intermission. He goes up into the air. You can't do any damage to him. Again, well, he's taking 99% less damage, so you can reset cooldowns or get resources or stuff, but he doesn't take any damage. And he keeps doing bombs, and he also summons exploding sheep that explode after a while and then send these fire plumes around, so you need to dodge those. And then he will land, and of course the landing actually does a good amount of damage. So if you have like a personal cooldown there, or even an immunity, you could just immunity that. That's like one of the big blasts of damage. So every time he jumps off and lands, he's dealing raid-wide damage. And also the bots, they do this spark pulse. You can see them there casting it. That spark pulse hits everyone in the raid, and then it also stuns anyone within that little area next to the bot. So you don't want to be standing next to the bots. You definitely want to have druids trying to mass root the bots, just so they don't, you know, run around and they're like causing lots of trouble. So that frontal, I dodged that frontal. That was close. I had a nice wind fury, wind walk totem there to get out of that frontal. That was a little close. I don't advise cutting it that close. And he's doing gigavolt charges. Of course, in this phase, the enrage, basically the enrage of this fight is that he slowly summons more and more bots, and he doesn't shrink enough people to get rid of the bots. So it's just sort of a soft enrage of, after a while, you're just going to have too many bots, and you're going to be taking too much raid damage to really heal through. Your healers are going to run out of mana and all that. So basically, you just have to kill him quickly in this phase. So you definitely want to save lust for this phase. Basically, right when he lands, you should probably lust there, just so if you start losing people like later on, they're not losing a lust. You want to lust as soon as possible in that third phase, in this in the final phase. So again, that's heroic. I mean, it's pretty simple. Let's skip right to mythic. So the mythic strat, basically the main strat is you're starting over here. So this is behind the boss. On that heroic kill, we were sort of in front, just at the stairs. We didn't really do any positioning at the start. But on mythic, it's a good idea to have basically you're ranged on this sort of orange marker here. That way you can easily use the line of sight to get the bombs out when you need to, and then send other people to the other corners. Because again, when you are dropping a bomb, when the bomb blows up, you're dotting anyone in line of sight, so you can't have two people run to the same area and line of sight themselves from the rest of the raid, because they will both dot each other. So that's just extra damage. You want to avoid that. So all three people who get the bombs, they want to go to three sides of the room. They don't really want to go to the same sides. There are a few cases maybe where you can go to the same side and make it out, kind of all right, but that you shouldn't really try to be doing that. So here, this is one of the great spots to drop a bomb. This is actually a great bomb run, and this is a really good video for just showing. I got lucky. I mean, well, maybe unlucky, because I want to do more damage. But I got lucky to show where these bombs should go, basically. So one thing I could have worked on here is trying to stay in line of sight of the healers for just a little longer. Like, you don't want to run out immediately, because the bomb actually does a ticking dot as you hold it, and then it does the dot on you after it blows up as well. So you are going to be taking a good bit of damage as a bomb carrier. But one of the spots, let's just pause it right before that, like right here. So you can see basically my line of sight to the melee is just cut off by this corner of this pillar. And then my line of sight to this, this is the sliver range group. So basically, again, like I mentioned in previous videos, you sometimes are going to have two range groups, the sliver trinket range group and then the non-sliver. But the sliver trinket group, I'm just barely out of line of sight of them as well. So this Moving back is a really good sort of idea to just kind of maximize the space. And the reason you want to kind of move back and not just be using the same spot every time is when you drop a bomb on Mythic, it drops a radiation pool, like under where you sort of blew up. So that radiation pool, I think it persists for at least like 3 minutes, maybe it's 2 or 3 minutes. So that means that other people who are running out with the bomb and they're coming to this same spot, they cannot stand in that radiation pool because it gives you a stacking debuff that just trucks you. It's a really tough debuff. You should never get a single stack of that on any kill, on any attempt. You should never get a single stack of radiation like poisoning or whatever from standing inside of a field of where somebody else had already dropped a bomb. So I dropped it there a little bit far back. That way it's kind of a triangle. So I dropped it sort of in the back, but then other people can drop it here and here, like on the corners of this pillar. And then for the intermission phase, for the kind of slightly more hectic and a little bit, like more crazy phase, you want to be using this easier front pillar. You want to use that because it's easier to get to and quicker. And, if shit is kind of going a little bit crazy, you want to have the easier spot to get to during the intermission. So you want to save this moon marker area, save that for the intermission because it's definitely, again, it's easier to get to. And you can sort of, use that to work around a little bit with your timings. And in Mythic, when he does Wormhole Generator, again, it's on a player. He will knock up 2 players and he will sheep 2 players. It's basically like a gnomish engineering thing. Like sometimes the engineering backfires, and it's kind of like in vanilla WoW. I mean, I guess it's still around now, but like sometimes you would use certain engineering items and they backfire. Like they deal damage to you, they turn you into a chicken, they knock you back or whatever. So it's sort of like that in this raid encounter. He knocks 2 people up and then this is random, and then he'll randomly sheep 2 players. So that means you have to, first of all, dispel the sheeped players because, as you can see here, he is jumping and he's going to land. And if you're still sheeped and you're just walking around like an idiot in the AoE, I think this is basically a one-shot. It definitely does like at least 280, maybe 300,000 damage. So you really can't survive being inside this AoE. So you need to move out. So that means if you are polymorphed, in a chicken, turned into a chicken, you need to get dispelled by the healer. So that's really just a healing thing. And you need to be aware that if you are dispelled, if you are chickened, you need to like be ready to like get the hell out because the dispel might be a second or 2 late. And if it's too late, then you die immediately anyway. And that's, it's not really good. And for the 2 people getting knocked up, again, for Marksmanship Hunter, we can just disengage. So basically you will get knocked up and then the boss is about to jump in. And if you don't disengage, if you don't use any kind of like get out of the circle thing, he will kill you because basically it's the timing that he lands right as you're landing back down. And you're going to take a lot of falling damage anyway if you don't use anything. So you can slow fall, you can use like a Demon Hunter glide, but with Hunter we can disengage. So basically you want to get up and then come down a little bit. You want to be on the return flight. You don't want to disengage like at the top because you're going to take a lot of falling damage. Of course, this is for druids as well. But kind of wait to come back down, maybe halfway, a little bit before half, like maybe 2/3 of the way down, and then disengage out, and then he will land. And you're going to take falling damage. You can't really avoid falling damage there as a hunter. So just be careful with, maybe have a healing potion, exhilaration ready. Otherwise, like shaman and stuff, people who don't have any kind of slow fall or anything that can save them from falling damage, you have to grip them with a priest, basically. I think that's the only way to do it. Maybe, if your mages are sick, they can be like slow fall, like real quick, but I mean, priest grip is pretty good for that. And again, about the rotation here, Marksmanship, we're going to wait for him to cast Shrink. So I'm at 20 seconds about on my True Shot cooldown. We're going to wait for him to shrink and then use True Shot because we don't want to get shrunk and have True Shot up at the same time because we didn't really think about that ahead of time. Like true shot is up here. Well, yeah, that was basically the right timing. So this is like the God mode sort of RNG run. So on Mythic, it's the same thing. And I didn't even explain this, but shrunk people, they take damage from big people who run over them. So basically, uh, if you're just a regular sized person and then somebody is shrunk next to you, you can, if you want to be a dickhead, you can run over them and it does like 180,000 damage to them and it stuns them for like 2 seconds. So that means do not, like, if you're a regular sized person and there's shrunk people around you, do not just be like moving around like needlessly. Like don't just be running and moving, and because they might need to get somewhere, they might need to dodge a mechanic, and they need to be able to move without the fear of, a regular sized person just moving without purpose. So make sure in this fight, especially on Mythic, don't move at all without a purpose. Like just, it's fine to just stand still. Like sometimes in this fight, it's good to just stand still as a ranged DPS. I mean, as melee, basically the same too. Melee, you're gonna have to work around with if somebody is shrunk near you, just make sure you're not moving onto them, stuff like that. On Mythic though, there's another buff. So actually one person in the raid will get big. They will get really big. And as you can see here, this is a lucky run because I just get to see all of the mechanics here. I get big. And the big buff is the same sort of mirror image of the shrunk buff, as in, if I'm big and I start walking over people, I'm going to start doing 180,000 damage to them and stunning them for 2 seconds or something. So if you do get the big buff, really don't move. And if you're a melee, I mean, I don't want to tell you not to do damage, but I mean, don't just charge back in or shadow step back into the boss if you're really big and just, and start walking over people. Like make sure that you just slowly move and be like, okay, everybody, you can see me, right? Like just slowly move into the boss and make sure you're not running people over. And if if you are the really big person and you run over a shrunk person, it does 1 million damage. So it's a one shot. So again, that's, if you are shrunk and you see the big guy, just stay away from them because they might have to dodge a mechanic. Again, the big person, sometimes they do have to move. So you really need to give them room to move because they can't wait for you to move out of the frontal. They want to move out of the frontal so they don't die. So here, he's casting the frontal just about on me. So I have to move, but I stutter stepped just a little bit. Like I didn't want to just just run over here and just be like, okay, I dodged it. Like I just wanted to get just barely out of the frontal and not have to over move. Like don't do, over movement in this fight, basically. Think of movement as almost like a resource, like DPS or healing. Like movement is it's an important thing to be done at the right time. And so, obviously I have True Shot here, so I'm doing big damage. The big buff gives you a 10% damage buff. It's not, it's not much. It's 10%, but it's nice. So I got a 10% damage buff during True Shot there. That was awesome. And it lasts for 30 seconds. All of the shrunk debuffs and the big debuff, they last for 30 seconds. And finally, I'm going to get into a bot here at some point, so I'll just go over that when I do. But basically, you want to make sure, again, that you're dropping the bombs out well and you're not getting radiation sickness, standing in the radiation thing. So you want to make sure you're really sort of maximizing your real estate. So think about it, again, as a resource, like the amount of room, the amount of area you have. So here, again, I get another bomb. And again, I'm going to stay in. So one of the timings in the boss, he will throw bombs out and then he will actually immediately teleport everyone, the wormhole generator thing. So that means you won't be able to run the bomb out and drop it in time because he's going to teleport everyone in anyway. So if you get that bomb during that timing, and you can see here, I mean, this is video proof of when that timing is. It's what, the third one, right? Or something like that. Just don't run out. Just stay in the raid like you normally would, and then wait for the teleport, and then move to your area. Now, unfortunately, I got knocked up with a bomb, so that can be a problem. I mean, I'm a really fucking good player, and I'm sick awesome, so I actually, didn't have a problem at all. But if you're, a shaman or something, and you need a grip, and then you have to move out, like you really just have to be aware and like ready to focus on where am I going? Like I have to know exactly where I'm going right now to get this bomb out of the raid so I'm not nuking everyone. But as you can see here, so this is an example of me getting knocked up. So just quickly, so I get teleported, instantly knocked up. I get to the top and then I fall a little bit and then I'm disengaging and I have a bomb. So luckily I'm so good at disengaging, best disengage NA, that I disengage perfectly right back to this area and I'm dropping the bomb on that third corner of this trio, of this kind of trio of corners that you can use behind there. So that's like a perfect bomb example. You should really try to emulate that. And again, I just got lucky. Like I was able to drop the first one perfectly, and I was able to drop that third one on that spot perfectly. So that was great. And again, he's shrinking there, so I'm going to wait for shrunk and then use true shot. Uh, you don't want to be holding. You don't want to be using your cooldown during shrunk. Again, I can't say that enough. But here I'm going to wait for berserking. Yeah, so I'm waiting for berserking here, and then I'm going to use all three of my sort of cooldowns and do some big blast true shot damage. So he will transition at 40%. So just think about, like, you want to use something before 40%. Don't use it like right at 42, 41%, because he's going to be going 99% less damage. So just save it probably. Or just think about using it earlier on in the fight so it's up earlier. But whatever. And I think the intermission lasts maybe 2 minutes or a minute and a half or something. So here I am just so fucking good at this game. I weasel my way in just right between these two radiation pools because I knew there was room, because I have dropped two of those personally. So I knew that there was room. And I moved right in between, and look, I can drop a fourth one. 4 fucking bombs in that little area. That is really what you want to be aiming for on this fight on Mythic. Like, you really want to be maximizing, your real estate. Like, you want to be using the smallest area for each bomb so that you have lots of extra room if you need it. Because you might have 1 or 2 people who are kind of like freaked out, like, oh shit, where do I drop this bomb? I don't know where to go. But they're gonna, so give them the opportunity to drop it in in sort of a hectic part of the fight. So as you can see, these guys are shrunk. So you want to make sure, stay away. Don't run over Benedictus here. Don't run over Eighth. Don't run over Holy Driver. Like, just kind of keep them at range. And as you can see here, this is our Fury Warrior Hum. He is big right now, but you can't do damage. So that's too bad. It's too bad he got it there. He's big as hell, and he's just completely standing still because there's really nothing to do. There's no reason to move. There's no reason to really do anything. He is just standing still. So this is a little bit of a shit show right here, what happens. So like Eighth and Midoriya were kind of moving there. So I was like, oh shit, I don't want to run them over, but I got to get over here because I have a bomb. So movement speed during that one. This is probably the spiciest part of the fight. This is where during the intermission, when there's already a lot of shit going on, he does bombs and then teleports. So that's again where you can't quite get the bombs out quickly, like, because you have to wait for the teleport. And he polymorphs people and he knocks people up, but there is no smash because it's during the intermission. So I was like, oh shit, I got to get over here fast. And unfortunately here, DB goes to the same spot that I do, and I turtle my own dot. I take his dot, though. You can use an immunity to avoid the dot from the bomb. So, like, as the bomb is going off, like, have your immunity up, and then it'll sort of deflect the dot. So, and then we're going to lust right here, and we're just going to do big damage. This is really what you want to focus on, doing big damage. Try to make sure you have at least some 2 minutes, if not 3 minute cooldowns up right here. And then potion, of course. I don't have berserking out, but I'm going to use it again in the fight, so it's not too bad. So we're trying to maintain somewhat the same positioning here, but during this phase, it's okay to sort of start spreading out more just because of the exploding sheep. That's a new part here. Like you want to make sure you're avoiding the exploding sheep and make sure you're giving shrunk people like an out, allowing them to move out if they need to. So make sure you are spread a little bit. Make sure you are spread a little bit, but not too much. You don't want to be at the edges of the room as like ranged DPS or a healer, because people are still dropping bombs on these corner areas. And as you could see in the sort of at the beginning of this fight, when I dropped my first bomb, I was pretty close on the line of sight. So if if you're within the line of sight, or you're hidden from me, you're not taking the buff. But if you just move out, if you're just moving out into my line of sight a little bit, just because you're spreading out from the fight, you're going to start getting bomb debuffs, and that's terrible. So you want to kind of stay inside of the fight, stay sort of in the central area. And that's relevant for heroic as well. So here you saw I disengaged out of that just because I'm a little bit lazy. I could have ran out, but I disengaged out, but I'm kind of at a bad angle. I might catch a bomb debuff here. So I quickly ran back in sort of into the center of the fight a little bit. So he is shrinking. So I actually am getting shrunk here. So we finally get to see. So I'm shrunk. So I'm okay, guys. Don't run me over. Like, don't, fuck me up. I think I get stunned here. I'm terrible. Yeah, like I'm not a good player. So I got stunned there. So basically, if you get shrunk, you have to get into the bots. And here's what happens when you get into the bots. So you can see the interface here. You actually pick up 5 buttons. So you have these buttons, and basically they're color coded. And if you're colorblind, there are some shapes, obviously, so you can do shapes as well. But basically, it's sort of like this card game, that old card game of like you put a card on your forehead and everyone else can see it, but you can't see your own card. So it's sort of like there's a communication element that is required here. It's basically you cannot really kill the boss without the communication, the voice communication, like using Discord, using whatever VoIP that you have, because you have to be like, okay, so Bay Shifter, I can see Bay Shifter right here. So I can see Bay Shifter and he's red. So I can be like, hey, Bay, you're red. And then Bay can see mine and he can see that I'm, green. And then we trade back and forth. Now on Mythic, there are 3. So that usually the way we do it on Mythic is you have one person that's sort of the leader and they call the 2 other people. So it's, if I was the leader here and ISO and Bay were in, I would be like, okay, ISO is blue. I can see ISO here is blue. Bay is red, and then what am I? And they would say green. Okay, ISO is red, Bay is green. What am I? Purple. So that's kind of, you want to go in order and then get everyone called out. And then when you're finished calling out, you can break the bot, sort of destroy the bot, and you get out and you're no longer shrunk and you go back to doing your normal rotation, normal part of the fight. So Bay is out there and it's just me and ISO, and then we told each other our last colors, and then finally you can see there just at the end, I'm hitting my colors, whatever the colors they're telling me, so purple there, and then you get 5 buttons that are all just the explode buttons, so just hit whatever, and that blows up the bot and it ejects you, and then you can go back to damage, healing, whatever. And that will always be 1 tank. I think always 1 tank gets shrunk, I believe. And again, on Mythic, the enrage is just he slowly summons more bots than he shrinks people. So you just have to kill him quickly here at the end. But that's basically the whole fight. You got to see the bots, you got to see the bombs. And if you know all this stuff on Mythic, then you're definitely going to have an easy time on Heroic, because Mythic it's more intense and it's less forgiving. It's definitely less forgiving. So if you're aware of the Mythic mechanics that I've shown here in the video, then you should be fine on Heroic, honestly. So there again, I had to disengage. I took some falling damage, that was like 20% of my health, so you want to make sure you're not dying to falling damage. There's a Buster Cannon. This wasn't my rank 2, but I got rank 2 on our next kill, I think. This is a very difficult boss to parse on, just in terms of DPS, just because you can get bombs over and over, or you can get shrunk over and over, and you're not doing any damage. So don't worry, don't worry too much about like your meter, being a meter whore. Like, don't worry about parsing too much. Like, you just really got to make sure you're doing the mechanics well and not fucking over your buddies. Yeah, so it's a pretty fun fight. I mean, it can be a little bit hectic and kind of unforgiving, and it can feel like you're getting all the shit on you only, and you're getting shrunk every pull and you can't do any DPS, but you just have to deal with it. Like, go back to Opulence if you want to pad and do good damage. Like, this is the type of fight later in the raid where you're going to start getting dicked on by just random mechanics. So you just have to, make sure that your teammates are doing good DPS as well, just so that you can spread the DPS love and not have to have one person carrying everyone. because that way, if that person gets shrunk, then you're not going to be very successful. And I'll leave you guys with the nerd screams. And I do not have Blockade or Jaina mythic footage. We've killed Blockade. We haven't killed Jaina. We're almost there. But when I get those, I will post those. But it could be like a few weeks just because we won't kill Blockade again. But I'll try to post maybe some other videos. But yeah, so I'll see you guys later on those. And this is our first kill.
Let's fucking go, boys! Fuck! Let's fucking go! Jesus, dude! Come on!
Holy guacamole!
Holy guacamole.